Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time for director and screenplay predictions for the month of August. Best director, we got Nolan #1. I mean, we had it for picture. I think it might win the most Oscars out of anything. That's a pretty big deal. It's been over 20 years since Memento, his breakout, his first Oscar nomination. Here he is. Many call it his magnum opus. Critics say it's a big achievement, and even people who might even like the movie but don't love the movie might want to give Christopher Nolan the Oscar for this thing. I mean, I just think that that's going to happen.
Say what you want about the film, whether you liked the last third or whether you thought there should be more explosions, as some people have oddly said. You can't deny that this is like an extremely well-made film.
I would like to see him win. I think that it's like his time, you know?
And it's going to happen. Even though Scorsese, you know, some people are thinking Scorsese could win, but I don't think Scorsese's doing like as much technically and as much innovatively as Nolan is doing in this movie.
I'll say this, Scorsese's not exactly doing anything visually that we haven't seen him do before. I mean, the movie's ambitious in its own ways. I could see him winning, and we had him at #1 last time, but I just think that Nolan's film just feels bigger and grander, and that's what they often look for in a movie they want to give Best Director to. And it's probably going to win more tech Oscars. Yeah, I think Nolan, #1. I feel very good about that now. So Celine's song for Past Lives, even though it might feel to some like, oh, that movie, you know, with all this Barbenheimer buzz, you know, where does it really stand? It's getting drowned out by all these other movies. And I think at the end of the day, critics are going to have it on their minds and people are still going to include it. I think it'll do pretty well. And I do think that maybe, you know, Celine's song is going to miss a Golden Globe nomination, or she'll miss like DGA or something serious.
Yeah.
But maybe the Oscars pull through, because honestly, why wouldn't the director's branch like this? It's highly critically acclaimed. It's very carefully assembled. And I'll say it again, every time an A24 film's been nominated for Best Picture, this happened 5 times. It's also gotten Best Director, even when people said that it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think she's strong for Past Lives. Definitely at the Oscars. I feel like at other places she's not as safe of a bet. But I don't know, I still think she might just get in everywhere.
The other thing is, some might argue, oh, because it's like literally her first movie ever, like didn't even do a short film, they might not kind of respect that as much. But at the same time, the Oscars will nominate these like new voices if you do a really freaking amazing job at stuff.
Yeah, people are calling this a very mature film. They love that like restrained style, and I don't see how a movie that's in Best Picture that has that kind of filmmaking behind it doesn't get Best Director also.
I don't want to call it a lock though, and really.
That's fair, just because I don't feel 100% sure that Past Lives will be a top 5 versus a bottom 5.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, I feel confident still that Past Lives is going to be a top 5.
It's like, what if it's Call Me By Your Name? Which was like #7, probably.
Even Marriage Story, which missed director, and I was like shocked by that. And these movies had 90+ on Metacritic.
I want to have Glazer in for the Zone of Interest. You know, despite not being confident in the movie for Best Picture, I did walk out of that thinking, yeah, that could get Best Director, because that's an achievement in filmmaking. It's untouchable this year, just for what it is. And Glazer feels like that can pick. He feels like the can pick. And people might be saying, what about Anatomy of a Fall? I mean, if that's in Best Picture, then isn't that the can pick? And to that I say, Justine Triet just doesn't have as much behind her that people have considered like super noteworthy. I don't want to dismiss her filmography, I haven't seen any of it, but I feel like people don't really even think about her past works when they look at this movie. They kind of just consider it on its own. Whereas Jonathan Glazer, of course, you know, a lot of movies come to mind, and like the fact that he's taking 10-year hiatuses between movies, and he's just very careful.
It's the kind of filmmaker where before you watch Zone of Interest, you revisit his filmography just to refresh.
It's like director's branch core.
Yeah.
It's totally up their alley. It's also the kind of thing that could get director and not picture, a la Cold War and Another Round.
Yeah.
And those movies wouldn't have gotten in with 10 either, I don't think.
It's weird because we usually aren't pro picking Best Director without a Best Picture to go along with it, but this film feels very specifically tailored to like have that happen to it.
Really does. It really
and
does.
If it ends up in Best Picture, it could be surprising, kind of like The Tree of Life. This film could pop up in picture just off of a director and an international nomination alone.
It also might be something that wins critics awards at like New York and LA and International Society of Film Critics. Barbie, I don't believe that this will get a director nomination. I think it's possible.
I think you're too quick to say that.
I think it's possible, but I think it will be gate kept by the director's branch.
Wait,
so movie that they have done before. They have done this
What's
before.
an example?
Snubbing Nolan for The Dark Knight and Inception, despite the fact that those movies were like technically marvelous. I think that they were a little too blockbuster mainstream.
What you're telling me is
you
think Gerwig's going to get in everywhere and then not the Oscar. She's going to miss
I didn't
BAFTA
say
and then
everywhere.
Oscar.
I think she might get like Critics' Choice and like I don't know, maybe
I think
she's going to get
DGA.
2 things or less.
I think she might get Golden Globe and Critics' Choice and DGA.
I don't know if she'll get Golden Globe. I think she might get like just like DGA and Critics' Choice or something. I don't really think that Barbie is a top 5. I think it's like number 6 or 7.
Really?
Kind of. I mean, maybe it's number 5, but like I think it's kind of...
Maybe I might be just influenced by what's going on right now and it just being in everybody's mouths. But I kind of do think it is top 5.
I'll give you another example of a blockbuster that got into Best Picture that was probably a top 5 and didn't make director. What is it?
That's
it's
fine.
Dune. It's Dune. And that guy got in already, just like Gerwig. He got in for Arrival, a movie that he just liked a little more.
But let me posit. Let me posit something to you. Do you need to finish your thought?
There's just certain populist movies, blockbuster films that the Oscars directors branch is just like, that's a little too mainstream. They might even want to nominate Alexander Payne instead.
That's totally fair. That's actually like a very fair point, and I might end up agreeing that she's number 6 or whatever. But I think you are a little too fastly dismissing it because let me posit that when Gerwig gets snubbed for the directing Oscar nomination, it's going to be headlines about her getting snubbed.
They've withstood it before, bitch.
I agree, but the fact is,
there were headlines about Ben Affleck and Dune and Bradley Cooper for Star Is
I'm not
Born.
saying that makes her getting nominated. I'm saying it makes her going to be predicted.
That's fine. She was predicted for Little Women, and we said no. And the other thing is that I think that Glazer's going to sneak his little ass in there.
Right. And I don't think he's going to get.
He's not going to get DGA. That guy's not going to get DGA. You know.
So he might. So what might happen is like the swap might be Glazer and Gerwig. But I think Gerwig is a very serious, very formidable contender for Best Director.
I also want to say Alexander Payne after seeing the trailer, and some people might see the trailer and they think, oh well, you know, it's just kind of like a low key like dramedy. You know, what's the big deal? I say that number 1, every time Alexander Payne has gotten a film in Best Picture, that guy's been nominated for director.
Yeah.
Even when we think early in the year, oh, he's not going to get it for Nebraska. The fact that he's doing a different style for this movie, the kinds of movies that he's paying homage to, they're changing up the sound. They got the whole look going on. I do think that Alexander Payne's like a real threat for director.
Yeah.
I really think that he might be. I think that movie might be a top 5. And if you want to say that controversy is holding him back with the Rose McGowan thing, for some reason, I feel like that didn't catch fire as much as other, like...
Me Too stuff.
Me Too stuff, if you will. I weirdly feel like I should put him in the top 5, but I have one more person that I am really considering, and it's Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. I feel like part of the reason he didn't get in for number 1 is because people felt like that story wasn't completed.
I don't think that's the reason.
Yeah, I think it might be enough
That's
of a
like
reason.
a thing you could say just because it's a Dune Part 1.
Maybe the movie didn't feel as deep or substantive in the way that the director's branch wanted to see, and that was because it was a Part 1. I felt like that.
I think you made the argument earlier in this video, actually. I think that the reason is because they like the indie filmmakers more, and they don't really need people to go big to give you a Best Director nomination.
But they will give you Best Director if you go big and you do it in a really, like, careful way. I mean...
The Martian, Ridley Scott, and Christopher Nolan for Inception.
If Dune Part 2 completes the duology in a way that is really satisfying and really brings home the depth and all that stuff that we were expecting from the first, in a way that I think the movie probably will live up to, I think they'll award him for it. And I think that they'll know, you know, we didn't nominate him last time, but now we will give you the nomination now, Villeneuve.
I don't know. I mean, I think in a way, like, a Part 2 makes you less likely to be nominated. Kind of like an Avatar Part 2 or something. We saw what you did last year. We're not quite as thrilled with the novelty here.
I'm just saying maybe it's better. I could boot him out for Alexander Payne, and I wouldn't really think that that was that weird of a trade-off.
Yeah, I know. I get that it's weird to predict him being snubbed twice for like the same thing, and I definitely think Dune is going to get nominated for a bunch of Oscars. But I'm also like, you did make a real... I agree with your argument about Alexander Payne. I agree that he's doing something interesting with the holdovers that nobody else is doing, and that he's a director who's been nominated many times before for doing stuff that didn't have that much style. But it would be really weird if Villeneuve didn't get nominated for both Dunes.
I made the argument why Zone of Interest is stronger, but that doesn't mean I would rule out Anatomy of a Fall for a director. I also just kind of expect Anatomy of a Fall to be more of a screenplay actress player. As we saw last year, All Quiet not nominated for director, probably because that director's reputation wasn't as strong. I don't think it's just because it's an international film. So
she's not like a recognized auteur like those other international films that we've gotten in our...
Lanthimos for Poor Things. Style in there is crazy. I think it would have to be a top 5 to get in director, maybe. You have Todd Haynes for May December, which is like kind of a maybe candidate for
could be like
a director
shocker,
and not
surprise.
Picture, right? Bennett Miller Foxcatcher vibes a little bit, but because we have the zone of interest, I just think I feel better about that.
I mean, the Spider-Verse directors, I would consider them. I don't think they're like a zero possibility, especially because, you know, I do wonder sometimes if Spider-Verse could enter winning conversation.
Oh, I still think they'd get snubbed by the Oscars.
Yeah,
even if they got DGA.
I think it probably doesn't happen either way. Spider-Verse is a film that seems like it could go up to like the top 3, or it could be just kind of hover down below 5.
Original screenplay. What do you think about Past Lives? Because I feel like maybe we could end up being disappointed that doesn't win.
Well, that's what we thought about Women Talking, and it still won.
You're right. You're right about that. And Women
Look,
Talking
I think
barely
Past
made it
Lives
into
is
Best
strong.
Picture.
Probably gonna win Best Screenplay.
I also think the whole narrative about that movie is the screenplay.
I think it does just feel like a movie that will win Best Screenplay. Even Call Me By Your Name, which we were just comparing it to.
Easy because that movie didn't have any Best Picture contenders in competition. I mean, here you have The Holdovers, which is not written by Alexander Payne. It's just, you know, kind of a rando screenwriter, so I think that's less compelling. They like giving it to the writer-directors.
The only thing that could beat it is like if The Holdovers or Saltburn were gonna win Best Picture or something like that.
Saltburn is not gonna win screenplay again. Emerald Fennell is not going to win 2 Oscars over her first 2
I'm just saying,
films.
like, if it's a Best Picture winner, then.
Anatomy of a Fall, I think, will be nominated.
Yeah.
I feel pretty comfortable with that. It just makes sense. It's very, very dialogue heavy. It's also really well written. And then at 5, I'm kind of giving the same arguments that I had to give last time. You know, many would say May, December, because that movie's, you know, looks like it's going to be a big festival player and stuff. But I just have a feeling that May December won't get a screenplay nomination as long as it's not in Best Picture.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, Air feels like it could possibly hold a Best Screenplay nomination on its own. It could be like, you know, we like your movie and we're going to give you a little, like 2 or 3 claps for it.
Or maybe Air is being the Ricardos. At the same time, we were talking about how May December is being the Ricardos because it's getting acting nominations and then getting a screenplay snub. Maestro also probably tied to if it's in Best Picture. Everything else I don't really quite believe in like so much.
I think Drive Away Dolls is worth a mention. Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Did you forget that?
Did you see the trailer for Drive Away Dolls?
I did.
Yeah, I
don't think that much of it. But what if it gets like a 75 on Metacritic?
Okay,
Then it could get a screenplay.
Could it? And yet, what happened with Llewyn Davis? Did that get a screenplay nomination?
No.
How did Buster Scruggs get more screenplay nominations than Llewyn Davis? That's a question I haven't even thought about yet. Adapted screenplay. I think you feel better than me about Barbie winning.
I feel somewhat strongly that Barbie's gonna win.
Again, I'll just say this. Almost everybody I talk to likes it less than me and has like their reasons for thinking that it's
That's
like
fine.
not amazing. And can you still win off that? Maybe you can. Maybe you can. I feel like Hollywood likes.
I think that's the thing, is that the movie feels like it could still win off of that. Just the comedy alone could be enough for people to say, yeah, we could give that the screenplay award. And you're Greta Gerwig, okay? Doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't hurt at all that she has never won that award. And it's like a fun award. Like, it would be one of the more fun awards to give out.
It'd be extremely fun. You give it
for
to
Noah Baumbach as well. The originality that went into making a film that really, on its surface, shouldn't have been very good.
Has standout monologues. And, you know, if you look at our category, actually, if you look at what we're predicting right now, we are predicting all blockbusters. Killers of Flower Moon, not really like a blockbuster, but it's a huge budget movie. That's actually kind of interesting. This is like the most expensive adapted screenplay category I've ever seen. Barbie, amidst all the other blockbusters, I think it's a little bit more of the writing kind of movie, and the others are a little bit more visual writing.
You could say that the movie is overly written, but then it's like, okay, but does that make it less of a case for best screenplay? Not necessarily. And I also think there have been some films that people are sort of mixed on, like Jojo Rabbit and Promising Young Woman that get the award anyway.
Wouldn't it be cool if Greta Gerwig and Nolan got Oscars and it was Barbenheimer?
Yeah,
and they hold them together, and then and then you know they're taking pictures in the picture room, and then the press is like, "Get the Barbenheimers together! Get the Barbenheimers!"
I don't think Oppenheimer's going to win director and screenplay. I just don't think so.
I think because Nolan is just so winning, you just don't have to do it. And you know, I remember that being the case for Chloe Zhao for Nomadland,
and also Jane Campion in Power of the Dog.
That lost to Coda. That script, the script lost to Coda.
I know.
Final thing we should mention: what if Barbie's an original? Do you still think it's
Right.
going to beat Past Lives?
I would say, oh man, that's a really hard one actually.
Because Barbie is a big sensation. Past Lives is this little thing.
I can't even fathom it, honestly. It fits so conveniently that they're in separate categories that I cannot imagine it.
I still think it's probably going to count as adapted. I do. Killers would only win if it was winning Best Picture. I don't think it feels as much like a screenplay winner as Barbie. And I don't think Oppenheimer quite feels like it either, even strong contenders as they are.
So it's kind of like Barbie will win unless Killers wins Best Picture. Maybe you should have Killers at number 2.
You know, funny enough, Dune Part 2 and Killers are both written by Eric Roth. So you get a double nomination this year.
Dune Part 2 because Dune Part 1.
Yeah, that's,
Do we need to
that's
say
fine.
more than that?
You definitely don't. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I think that
this is strong.
It gets in if it's in Best Picture. And you know what? That movie has comedy, witty dialogue. It has
There's a lot of reasons to nominate
well done
that.
character arcs and like
There's a lot of
emotional moments. I think
reasons.
it kind of does make sense if you're going to have it in Best Picture, especially.
It has like a little bit of a trippy meta angle, which they obviously loved with Everything Everywhere.
People talk about Film Lord and Chris Miller even more than they talk about the directors.
And this will be
of
their
the
first
movie.
nomination.
Poor Things, if that's in picture, that's going to get screenplay. It seems like a really interesting adaptation, and it's got, you know, comedy and wit and weird shit going on. I feel like that definitely fits. The Killer, maybe that's a screenplay contender as well. The Zone of Interest, I just don't think about it. I'm like, what would you be, you know, what would you be nominating there? Like,
I might
it's a
have
little
to bet my
strange.
toe that this category turns out to be 5 out of 5.
You know, you don't bet your toe in August. I
have
bet
to
your
bet
toe
my
that
toe.
it's not going to be 5 out of 5.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's
And
probably
Dune
more
Part 2
likely
could
not to
move,
be.
and you're going to be all toeless, and it's going to be terrible for you.
What do you think about the possibility of Next Goal Wins getting a screenplay? Like a lone screenplay movie. Is that crazy?
If the movie's received in like a semi-mid way, I don't really see the path. I think The Color Purple is probably not going to happen in the screenplay. I think All of Us Strangers, interestingly, could be a screenplay contender, actually. That kind of makes sense. I don't really know what to say about other movies. The Boy and the Heron, I guess, you know, maybe sometimes anime. It's not going to like double it up with Spider-Verse, though. Probably not. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Would you dare to predict a screenplay winner who didn't direct their movie?